Silliest reason that you got punished for? I took a book outside to read by myself one day in year 3 at primary school, 7/8 years old. A group of my friends stopped the game they were playing to come and see what I was reading, leaving this one guy who I wasn't really friends with by himself. He got monumentally told the teachers, and at morning assembly the next day it was announced that books were now banned from being taken into the playground, and I got told off for being a bully. TLDR. Took a book into the playground when I was 8, causing child literacy rates to plummet in the UK. Fun freaking times as an 8-year-old. Another one I just remembered. I was given detention by my maths teacher in year 10, 9th grade, because I farted after being kept after class for talking. The reason for detention section on the detention form read purposely flatulated after being kept behind in class. My parents both laughed when they signed it. I don't think it was really punishment for my brother, but he farted in class in year 11 and it was one of those really smelly loud ones. Everyone heard it including the teacher. So the teacher sent my brother out of the classroom for 5 minutes to think of what he had done while the rest of the class had to bask in the smell. In kindergarten, we were given coloring sheets with a picture of an apple on it, complete with stem and leaf, and told to color it red. So I colored the apple red, the stem brown, and the leaf green. Because that's how they're supposed to be colored, damn it. I got sent to the hall because we were supposed to color the whole thing red and I wasn't following instructions. I maintain to this day that I was right. My kindergarten teacher once made me cry because we were given a sheet with a bunch of pictures on it and told to color the images that began with the letter P. I didn't color the pony, and when she asked me why, I told her it was a foal, and foal doesn't start with the letter P. She told me there was no such thing as a foal, and forced me to color in the pony. Once got written up, had to clean the teacher's room once a week for like 2 months, by a teacher for cussing, on a Saturday, at a park, while not at some weekend event for school. Didn't even know she was there until I said something, not about her a teacher, and she basically came out of nowhere. Came in that Monday and was called to the front office and given a slip with the punishment. Tried to appeal it to the principal and she basically said that the teacher could do so because she had seniority over me. That's frickin' balls. I would laughed in her face and said, yeah right. In grade 2, I had a friend called Marcus. He was a troublemaking hack child, but back then I didn't care, and we got along well. Until one incident. We had a teacher called Mrs. Fedorovich, and in the afternoon she'd say goodbye to us all, and we'd all say good afternoon Mrs. Fedorovich in cinch. Well, Marcus was sitting next to me and instead, he says good afternoon Mrs. Fedorovich and then instantly jumped up with a loud gasp. He said B. That little sucker framed me and I got a week's detention, even after my 6-year-old butt cried and begged to the teacher with my mum. Never forget. I was accused of plagiarism in high school on a final project for my history class. It was well written. I had a reputation for slacking off and misbehaving throughout high school. My teacher claimed it was written at a college level and I simply was incapable of doing such work, so I was sent to the dean to plead my case. I of course pleaded innocent, because I'm not about to take a bullet for this crap. This was the kind of punishment where I would have gotten my diploma revoked if everything worked out the way they wanted. So what do the idiots do? They make me take an oral exam on my own paper. They have the head of the department, who is a lovely man by the way, sit me down and ask me first to talk about the paper in my own words for 10 minutes, and then he asked me questions about the paper in specific. I shot out every answer and was free to go while they evaluated. A couple days later they tell me that they believe I wrote the paper, and cut me a fricking deal. They won't fail me out of the course and jeopardize my high school career if I accept a whole drop off of a grade for turning in the paper late. The paper was late because it was held in suspension until the investigation was over. I actually did hand it in on time. At that point though I was too shaken and exhausted from the entire ordeal to turn down their offer. TLDR. My school taught me what crappy bureaucratic systems feel like. My mom loves to tell the story of how, on my birthday, my kindergarten teacher took my chocolate bar away during snack time because it wasn't a healthy snack. I became so offended that I marched right out of the classroom, somehow, across the hall to the principal's office and asked the principal's secretary to fire my teacher for stealing. My diplomatic principal offered instead a small carton of chocolate milk in exchange for the candy bar and would speak to Mrs. whoever about taking away a birthday girl's candy. I imagined the offer being made in a very formal fashion with lawyers. My client is prepared to offer the sum of 1 carton of chocolate milk for your candied bar. In pre-kindergarten, age 4-5, we were learning how to write our letters. The teacher did this by covering the glass of a cart projector with sand and drawing the letter with her finger so that it was projected onto the wall. She would then call all of us up one by one to copy the letter and let us go back once we were close enough. The only problem was that I had already learned my letters and how to read at my preschool, and so when she called me up to write the A, I drew it in a different style than she had. I had thought she would be proud of me for already knowing the letters. Instead she got mad at me and made me write it again. But I was a stubborn child, and I knew what I had written was correct, because that's how my parents and preschool teacher wrote. So I continued to write my differently styled A. Eventually she gave up on me and wrote a note home saying she was worried about my progress in school and my ability to recognize patterns. Years later, when I read To Kill a Mockingbird and read how the teacher refused to admit Scout knew how to do something because it wasn't done in the right way, I laughed because I had gone through that exact same situation. I got grounded for a week because I forgot to put the jar of mayo back in the frig. My mother would always leave the milk or cheese out, but I could never say anything to her, so I just put it back. However, if I left something out, I would get yelled at. My sister and I had this theory that since we were generally good kids, never stayed out past curfew, didn't go to parties, didn't drink or do drugs, etc., that our parents got bored and had to punish us for really trivial things. My mother is the type of person who says one thing, but will change her mind without notice, so you never know when she'll get angry. I can remember another time when I didn't get punished, but she got really angry with me. I was used to the put things back where they belong rule, so after I used a pair of scissors on the table, which is where I found them, but not where they belong, I put them back in this cup where we kept them. When my mother got back to the table she flipped out because the scissors weren't on the table where she left them. She started yelling and I told her I put them back where they belong, and she started yelling at me even more for not putting them back where I found them. Not to mention, the cup where they were normally kept was like 2 feet away from the table. Sounds just like my mom. I always assumed it was because I was a good kid too. I might as well start a rhyme lab in the basement and actually do something worth getting in trouble for. When I was 9 and my brother was 4, we were bickering in the backyard and he picked up a little white stone from our flower bed and then chucked it at me. Despite the fact that I was on the swinging, the little bastard nailed me in the back of the head. It was just dumb luck that he actually hit me, and my brother is not a child ninja prodigy, but regardless my head was bleeding and I was going to fricking snitch on his butt. I go running into the house and go before my mother with the typical mom, look at my blood. He made blood spiel. She asked me what happened, but when I told her, she didn't believe me. He's 4 years old, the 6 of swords, there is no way he hit you with a rock if you were swinging. Besides, he's in the playroom. I'll be damned if his little butt hadn't managed to run around the side of the house, shimmy though the dog door and position himself at the top of the stairs like he'd been there all along. Maybe I disregard the ninja option too quickly. Anyway, I get sent to my room for doing something stupid, probably jumping out of the swing again and trying to blame my dear baby brother for my resulting injuries. It was some bulls. TLDR. I was punished for my brother having mad skills. Brother, I know you're a redditor, and if you're reading this then I hope you're proud of yourself, you smug little butthole, and let me remind you that you twice pooped in your toy box. I have a mentally ill mother, so there are so many to choose from. 1. Being woken up at 2 AM with my mom screaming and hitting me because I didn't clean the light bulbs in the bathroom lighting fixtures when I cleaned the bathroom. 2. I was grounded for 2 years my junior and senior year in high school because she was afraid I was going to run away from home. I never gave her any reason to think this. I was just biding my time until I turned 18 and could go to college. 3. Getting slapped in the face because I was crying over a sad movie. She said she wanted to give me a real reason to cry. Those are just off the top of my head. My mother was similar. She woke me up in the middle of the night once to ask if I was gay. I was like 11. It was 1987. I was 8 years old. I had been grounded from playing Nintendo by my mom. A common occurrence for me around that age since I was always on the thing. Well, a few hours later she gets home from going on an errand and I give her a pitiful, depressed look hoping she'll unground me, and she says, "Okay, I guess you can play. But you didn't play while I was gone, did you?" For some reason I worded my response, "No way, Jose," and I was telling the truth. I hadn't. However, she had never heard that expression before, apparently, because she replied, "What did you call me? You're grounded." First sight on the Google search says the Spanish name Jose means derived from the Hebrew name Joseph, which means he will multiply, so you called her a male that perhaps participates in hermaphrodite reproduction. When I was 12 and my sister was 6, she was annoying me in the car, and my mother warned us that if we kept up, she was going to kick us out of the car. My sister kept at it, and I responded in defense, and my mother swerved to the side of the road about 2 miles from our house. She kicked me out of the car, and then drove home with my sister and the groceries. When she came back to get me, I was about a mile down the road, and she said that she was sorry about it, but she just couldn't handle us arguing anymore. It wasn't my fault, but she couldn't put my 6-year-old sister on the side of the road, though it wasn't any sort of dangerous area of town. TLDR. I got kicked out of my mother's car because my sister was being a brat. That's not a very good lesson to teach your sister. We were in PE class doing the gymnastics unit, so we were in the gym on this really big foam mat that gymnasts do somersaults, cartwheels, etc. on. Since you can jump and get some good air on these things, I thought aloud to nobody in particular, "We should play dodgeball on this thing." My exact words. Seriously, those were the only words I said the entire period, except for here when he was calling attendance. My PE teacher took this as a threat to his authority. He ranted for a good 45 seconds about how that he's in charge and I'm not, and how if I wanted to teach PE I had to go to college and get my own PE credentials. I tried to tell him it wasn't directed to anybody and I was just thinking aloud, but he wouldn't have it and made me sit on the side of the gym for the rest of the period. He then gave me a 0 for the day. I ended up apologizing to him after class just because I didn't want to frick up my grade, although I now regret it because I ended up getting a B anyways. I should have told him to frick off. And seriously, who gives a crap about their PE grade? I didn't, but my PE grade turned out to be the reason I didn't graduate with a 4.0. Welp. It didn't happen to me, but I still find it hilarious. In elementary school, a few of my friends played a game called Battlezone at one of their houses with his dad playing as well. We played on a LAN connection on teams of 2 versus 3, consisting of my friend and I who didn't know how to play the game and my other friend's dad, while the other team consisted of his son and my other friend. The father and son know how to play the game with everyone else being clueless as to what to do. My friend on the opposing team rushed our base and built 4-5 turrets where the only entrance exit to our base was, completely trapping us into our base. Eventually the father got completely pissed off, yelled upstairs to his son threatening to ground him for playing so unfair. It was freaking hilarious. TLDR. My friend got grounded for kicking his dad's butt in a computer game. In elementary school, I was sent to the principal's office a record 186 times throughout the course of 4th and 5th grade. I had multiple parent-teacher conferences, referrals, and I was even suspended once in 4th grade. This being said, I got in trouble for a lot of stupid crap that happened to me. I will name a few of the stupidest things I got in trouble for, not in any particular order. 1. I was drinking out of the water fountain when my friend tickled me. Obviously, I ended up spitting out all of the water and laughing. The girl in line behind my friend went running to tell the teacher that I spat on the water fountain and I was sent to the principal's office. 2. Two of my friends were joking around and one of them was pretending to choke one another. We were reenacting some scene from a TV show or something. I was laughing my butt off because the scene was so comical. The teacher walks in the room right as this happens and sends me to the principal's office for being cruel and laughing at one boy hurting another. I always wondered why she didn't send my friend, the one who was doing the choking. to the principal's office as well, but I didn't want to ask why aren't you sending him as well and get him in trouble. 3. In 4th grade, a bunch of kids and I were playing Foursquare, which was all the rage back then. I ended up winning the game at the end of recess. One of the kids was mad that I beat him, so at the end of recess, when everyone got into line, he came up behind me and started hitting me. I, of course, started hitting him back. The gym teacher came running and picked me up by my shirt, effectively choking me, which in hindsight I think was definitely illegal, and then sent me to the principal's office. The principal asked me why were you hitting him and I responded, well, if someone starts hitting me, what am I supposed to do, stand there and get beaten? To which she responded yes. So I called her an idiot and I got suspended. 4. In 4th grade, bunch of white trash kids were making extremely sectarian comments. I am Asian. I told them to shut up. Teacher heard the entire exchange, but sends me to principal's office for saying bad words. I wasn't allowed to say things like shut up or call people stupid or dumb. 5. Had a really fat, old, hairy, gross diddler for a gym teacher in 5th grade. He would slap the girls on their butts and had inappropriate nicknames for each girl, i.e., he called one of the girls boing boing. He would also have them sit on his lap and do other creepy things. I once pointed out that he was really creepy to one of the girls, and they went and told on me. He sent me to the principal's office for saying bad things about a teacher. That's all I can remember for now. TLDR. Hated elementary school. Sounds like you did something towards the start of elementary school that, rightly or wrongly, identified you as a problem kid, which meant that any teacher would immediately assume the worst of you and that you were the culprit for everything. I bet you anything the two kids choking each other never really got into trouble at school. I was a straight A student and one Christmas party at my grandparents'. My father told me he was proud of my progress report, all A's as usual, nothing above a 94, so normal A's, no A+S. My mother all of a sudden was infuriated that she didn't receive the progress report yet. They are separated, snatched it out of his hands, then continued to yell at me for only getting 94s instead of 95s at the least, because then I would be an acceptable A+ student instead of a crappy worthless dumbass teenager. Her words. She also blamed me for the mail being late. In middle school, we had to walk silently back to class from lunch to lunch too, and two girls in front of me were shoving each other and laughing loudly as one pushed the other. The one falling pulled the pusher down with her and they started laughing hysterically. I was the only one given detention and almost suspended for pushing them. One summer, I couldn't take living with my mother anymore, so I stayed with my grandparents and father. But my mother would come over daily to yell at me for not walking, feeding the dog, not taking out the trash, not doing the dishes, and for trashing her apartment. I didn't even live there and it was in the next town and I had no car or license to get there. How the frick could I do that? When I was 4, my baby cousin was literally pulling out my hair while we were forced to have a family photo. I was yelled at for crying and then put in timeout. They wouldn't listen to me that the baby was pulling out my hair, and when they pulled me away, you could see the baby had rather large clumps of my hair and was trying to eat it. Another time, my older cousin was always jealous of me. She liked to push me out of pictures when the adults were trying to get both of us in the shot or just me. So when I was all like, hey Beaker, my grandmother thought I said B. So my cousin said I really did say B. I was still 4. I protest by saying but I called her Beaker and my cousin yells she said B again. I got my mouth washed out with soap and my grandmother was in earshot of both of us. 6th grade, the person sitting at the desk next to me was a real butt. He was sitting there loudly calling me really nasty names. C, W, B, S, etc. So I tell him stop being a freaking peckerhead, not knowing what it meant. And he yelled out to the teacher Erulus Chiel called me a peckerhead. The teacher didn't hear him call me all those names. Yet the other students did and they didn't defend me, and I was sent to the counselor's office for some counseling because I needed it for anger issues and I was almost suspended. If I had $10 for every time I got in trouble for no reason, I would be freaking rich. My family blames me for everything because I am not baptized. All throughout school, I got good grades. Straight A's if not straight A+S. But I often skimped on doing busy work if I could get away with it, and usually procrastinated on big assignments. With every report card, the grades came with comments from the teacher, and there was always at least one teacher that put in something along the lines of "I wish they would do all the work." That somehow always signified to my mom that, even thought I was getting perfect grades, I was a horrible student, and I would get lectured and punished like I had just failed all my classes. I was so happy once the teachers realized it was futile and stopped putting comments like that in. One day in elementary I had to use the bathroom while we were practicing for an upcoming spelling quiz. I asked my teacher if I could go and she said in 5 minutes. I then asked every 5 minutes, to which I only got the same reply. After about an hour, I'd say, we had a guest speaker, a soldier. I live in a military town, and in the middle of him talking I peed my pants. The teacher took me out to the hallway and reprimanded me until I was in tears and still standing in wet pants. The soldier came out as she was yelling, told her to stop, then picked me up, let me cry on his shoulder, and took me to the nurse's office. He then went to the principal, told him, and had my teacher fired. That soldier rocks. When I was in 8th grade, we had a substitute teacher for a science class, so we watched a movie. As a joke, a female classmate and I were throwing paper balls made of scraps at each other. Finally, I take a whole page out of my notebook, crumple it up, and throw it at her. I miss and it goes over her shoulder and hits another girl. The teacher sees this and reports me, so the assistant principal calls my mother and tells her to come in, which means she has to leave work early and lose hours. When he explains to my mother what happened, she gives him this look. I don't even know how to describe it. She says, "You called me out of work because my son threw a ball of paper, he was so pee." I nearly laughed at him. Everybody except him and the teacher thought it was freaking ridiculous, including his assistant. He said I was suspended for 3 days. TLDR. I was suspended from school for throwing a paper ball at another student. You could have killed somebody. In my middle school, you didn't get lockers until 6th grade, at which point they were all in one hallway. After that point, we weren't allowed to bring bags into class with us, and so you had to go to your locker between every class to get the books you needed. Since we only had 3 minutes between class, most of us put wads of paper on the inside of the door that kept the door from locking, allowing us to forego entering the combination to get into our locker. Our school was a small private school, and the only things we kept in the lockers were our books and bags. There was no chance anything was going to get stolen, and if it happened, it would be incredibly easy to find out who did it. Just figure out whose locker held 2 copies of that book. Instead of realizing we were just being efficient, the teachers freaked out and said that if they found out anyone had the lock bypass, they would get a detention. It then became one teacher's job to go down the hallway after school and check to see if every locker was locked. How efficient. A buddy of mine once got a month's detention for having the audacity to pull a sweatshirt out of his backpack as we went outside for a fire drill, which generally took 20-30 minutes in -15-hour weather. Catholic schools are serious about their dress codes. They also confiscated the sweatshirt. He eventually got them to return it, after he simply refused to show up for detention and took it to the president of the school. His defense: he's an EMT, and knew what standing outside in that weather for that amount of time would do, and described the relatively minor negative effects in detail to the president. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.